Hello, my beautiful children, and thank you again for joining me on another episode of Miss Vega Says What. I'm Priscilla Vega. My kids have always known me as Miss Vega, and this channel is called Miss Vega Says What. Today's episode is a little bit of a follow-up to the last episode I posted, which was called If Saying No Feels Awkward. This episode is called If Saying No Feels Mean. And I am so thankful for a friend of mine, I won't say their name, who is a parent to a beautiful young girl. And she said that her daughter struggles with saying no because it feels mean. And I love that question because I felt that way for a long time. I still probably do. And so I wanted to speak to it. So I wanted to make this follow-up video really quickly. The first thing I want to say is if a child, or your child feels like saying no feels mean, I want to say firstly, congratulations, because that shows that the parent has done a good job of enforcing boundaries, because in that moment, your child is able to recognize to say no, which is a step ahead of not being able to say no at all, or when it feels awkward, which was my last video, when you don't really know how to say no, or if you're supposed to say no, you're completely unsure and indecisive. But in this example where no feels mean to you, I think it's actually a lot of positive signs, mostly because you're able to recognize I should say no, right? So you're a step ahead in that game, because some people can't do that. And it speaks positively to a parent's being able, or to parents having had boundaries with their child, because in this moment, the child is now recognizing, oh no, a boundary needs to be set up. But they wouldn't know that had you not done it. And the thing about it is, about the language boundaries, right? A child can't often name it, like, oh, this is a boundary that I need to hold up, when they're having to say no, especially to a friend or whatever. They can't name it, but what's important is what you're doing. The setting the boundary is more important than knowing what it's called. So even if they don't know what this is called, it is setting a boundary. It's more important that they know how to do it, and like the why behind it, right? So again, good job parents, because your child is able to recognize that a boundary is needing to be placed. I also think that it really speaks positively, and it could be the parent, or it could be something natural that comes from the child, but it speaks positively to being an empathetic or conscientious person. The reason I say that is because when you feel mean saying no to someone else, you're empathizing with them not getting what they want. So you're conscientious of another person's sentiments, right? And not everybody is like that. And so I think that is a really positive thing. Those are two positive things that maybe have come from your parents, encouraging you in a certain way or putting up boundaries. Maybe you're just an empathetic person by nature, or you're a conscientious person by nature, but they're great things. Okay, so when saying no feels mean, you're empathizing with the person that you're saying no to in a way that's been born of your own experience. So I'll explain that. What I mean by that is that you're recognizing you need to say no, but it feels mean to you because at one point in your life, your parent, who has done a good job of doing boundaries, gave you a boundary and they said no, and it made you feel bad, or whatever, it made you feel bad or sad or disappointed or whatever, right? So you're empathizing, so now it's your turn to say no. So you're empathizing with that other person because you remember what it was like having no said to you and that you didn't like it. The thing about it is, in that moment, right, when you didn't get when your parents told you no, or they set a boundary, your parents, being adults, had a little bit more foresight to know that this little bitty disappointment or this little bitty decline, I guess, they had the foresight to know that it would lead to something being okay or something better. But as a child saying no, you might not have that foresight yet, because that is a developed skill. It's a little bit of a mature skill to have the foresight. If I say no to this and it bothers this person, there will still be something on the other side that'll make it okay. That is an adult concept, so I can see why, especially if you're maybe like a sweet type, like a mousy type, which I am, feeling no might feel mean. So you want to, I think I can use the term reverse engineer, but I don't want to be wrong, but I'm going to anyway. You want to reverse engineer, right? A time when your parents did say no to you and it made you feel bad. I'm going to use a really loosey-goosey broad example and say maybe it's that you wanted a toy at the store and they told you no and it made you feel bad. If you think back on that time, you felt bad and you were disappointed, but then you were okay. Nothing bad happened. You survived. And maybe you never got the toy, but you have some kind of device to watch YouTube. So there was something, right? Like a balance. But again, your parents have that foresight from being adults who have practiced having to have foresight, and you may not have. But if you think about moments like that, right? Like where your parents said no, and sometimes parents even use the phrase, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," when they enforce a boundary. And now you can empathize with their shoes. You can go into their shoes and say like, dang, that does suck. Maybe my mom or whoever did say no to me in that moment and it hurt me, but maybe it actually sucked for her too. Maybe she did want to get it for me, but in her foresight, she realized she didn't have the money or whatever it was, right? So you can empathize with your parents when they have enforced boundaries or when they have said no to you. Okay, so with that, I do want to say that if you are watching this with a parent or without a parent, if you're feeling like saying no feels mean, right? Your parent is probably an expert in this area because they have raised you in a conscientious way where you're now empathetic to the person you're saying no to, and you're also conscientious of a boundary needs to be drawn. So I'm not going to turn it all the way over to your parents, but I do want you to kind of look at your parents through a different lens, like, oh gosh, all those times that they said no and I got so butthurt, it kind of hurt their feelings too. They kind of felt like it sucked too, right? So you can do that practice, and that's an important practice to do, because for some people it might feel a little bit like forgiveness, but that's not really necessarily what you're having to go for, but it's going to make you feel like see a different side of your parents that's a little bit more richer, and maybe it'll provoke you to love them a little bit different or more. But I'm not going to turn it all the way over to your parents, although if you're feeling this way, likely your parents are really good at boundaries, at setting boundaries, and have encouraged you to be conscientious. So in their own language, they can explain to you maybe how to hold a steady ground with that. But I want to leave you with, when you're doing that, when you're feeling like saying no is mean, right? You're actually putting the energy of your empathy, which is wonderful to have. You're putting all the energy of the empathy onto the other person who you're saying no to. And what you really want to do is be cognizant of that energy. There's another video in which I talk about reaction space. So in your reaction space, you want to be cognizant, like, oh man, I'm feeling bad for that person that I said no to. But really, you need to bring that energy back from that other person and bring it to yourself. And you're going to soothe yourself. You're going to comfort yourself in whatever way sounds natural in your own brain. So I'll do my own, the way that I speak to myself when saying no feels mean. And again, this is for me. In my head, I'll just say like, dang, I feel bad about that, but I'm okay. I know I had to do it, right? And so that's how I talk to myself in my head. Sometimes I'll say my name like, damn Priscilla. Oops, I said the D word. Dang Priscilla. That felt kind of sharp, kind of mean, but they're okay. They're okay, and so are you, right? So the energy that you're empathizing to the person who's getting declined, it's hard. It can be hard a few times, the first few times, but over time, just like your parents, you'll become more steady in it. And maybe your parents also continue to feel not as easy saying no or putting up a boundary with you. Because it's a human response. It's actually a response of like kindness and empathy, which I've said several times, right? So when that happens, when you need to say no to someone, you have to. Even though it feels selfish, it's really actually not selfish, because the way that you learn something or you grew to be a person with boundaries by your parents giving you boundaries and saying no, you're actually giving the person that you're saying no to the same gift. Whether they take it or not is not your problem, but you're still giving them a gift of having to learn to accept no. So yes, I do. That's it, really. You just return the energy to you and say, okay, I said no, that felt crappy, but it was the right thing for me. I'm being true to myself. It helps me to say my own name in my brain when I say these things, and I have to comfort myself, right? Like, oh man, I feel kind of bad about that. And the thing about it is we think often like, oh, this is a one and done. You just do that one good time and you'll never feel bad about it again. And that's actually not how the body works. It might pop up in your brain like, oh my gosh, I said no to my best friends, whatever. I feel bad, and you have to do it again, right? You have to bring that energy that you're giving to your best friend's feelings back to your own feelings. And you're gonna have to ground and say like, okay, yeah, I did say no and it did suck, but it was the right thing. And whatever it is that gets you back onto like a steadier feeling. And I forgot to mention in my other video, but I'm so glad my friend asked me this question about mean, because I'm gonna say it in this video. I think that phones are a great way to practice, right? Because you guys are probably asked a lot of things on the phone or through text, like, can I do this? Can I borrow this? Can I see your homework? Can I whatever? Use your phone as practice, because it's easier than saying no face to face. So the next time you get that and somebody's asking you something on the phone and you want to say no, but you feel mean, just do it. Use your phone as practice. And then after you say no, right, through text message, just NO period or whatever, just NO, you don't have to explain. Then sit with that and say like, okay, I'm not a Disney villain. I said no and I'm okay, right? So you're gonna let go of that person's thought process, that person's energy, whether they're mad at you or they think something about you. It's hard to do. You're gonna try to let go of that and then return that energy back onto you and say, I was true to myself, I'm practicing saying no. So again, use your phone as practice for when it happens to you in real life, because in real life you will have, the bodily response that I spoke to in my last video. So practicing on the phone will get you steadier when it comes to the moment where you'll have to say no in real life, because it will come. But again, my videos are for like tweens and teens, and I suspect that you guys are getting a lot of solicitations, if you will, that you want to say no to and you're feeling mean. Practice, do it one good time. Maybe you could even do it like with a friend that won't judge you or abandon you or something like that, but use your phone as practice, no, and then sit with that feeling. Did anybody die? Have I been unfriended? Am I like the villain now? And you're gonna realize that it's okay. It's okay. It felt bad, but everything's okay. And again, I really think that this speaks to parents doing a good job enforcing boundaries and also enforcing conscientiousness into their child, or you might just be an empathetic person. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video and the question and all the positive feedback I've gotten from my friends. I am just beyond thankful and blessed, and I will see you soon on the next one.